we are joined this morning by Adam Searle, who's the Shadow Industrial Relations Minister. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Robbie. How are you?
Yeah, we're well. Okay, you heard the case being put there by the Treasurer. Why wouldn't you support a pay freeze?
Look, it's not a pay freeze, it's a pay cut. Inflation to the end of the March quarter was running at 2.2%. Even if there's a decline in inflation in the last quarter, inflation will be at 1.5% or higher. That is an erosion of the purchasing power of everyone's pay packets. If wages don't increase in line with inflation, people can buy less goods and services. The New South Wales Government is the biggest employer, not just in the state, but in the country. And if we're going to effectively cut the incomes of 400,000 public sector employees, they will simply be able to buy less goods and services in every town, suburb and village right across the state. That will be a big negative economic impact, and that will cost jobs, including in the private sector.
Well,
what about hundreds of thousands of jobs?
Mm-hmm. What about the Treasurer's assertion, though, that there will be so many new jobs created as the lines outside Centrelink get longer and longer? Do you not agree that that is the case?
No. The Premier and the Treasurer claim they pluck out of thin air a jobs figure they say they will create. But we haven't seen the modelling. But what we do know is that the negative economic impact of this measure will actually cost jobs across the economy more than the Premier and the Treasurer claim will be created. So this is actually an act of
where do you base,
self-harm.
just out of interest, where do you base that modelling on? Because the government's releasing modelling that $3 billion could be put into other projects, infrastructure projects that would create between 15 and 20,000 jobs.
Okay, well, let's unpack this. This government has got form in mismanaging the budget on major infrastructure projects to the tune of at least $13 billion. So the first question is if they manage to save any money...
Yeah, but hang on a second. I'm asking... You just made an assertion. Yeah. About the fact that the jobs created by going down the Treasurer's route will be fewer than the jobs that it costs. So where do you base those numbers on?
Okay, well, we know that when you spend in the economy, there's a multiplier effect. So you go to your shop, you spend money there, that shopkeeper pays their suppliers, the suppliers pay their employees. We know there's a multiplier effect across the economy of about sevenfold. And if you look at if the government's savings is correct, and I reckon they're going to save about $3 billion in this measure, that will be a significant economic impact right across the economy of over, 10 or $20 billion. So there is an economic impact right across the state from this measure, and that will ultimately cost jobs, including in the private sector. Now, they assert that there will be a job creation as a result of what they say they will do with the money they save. But their form is bad. They have a record of mismanaging the budget of major infrastructure projects, squandering up to $13 billion or more on the projects that we know about. So even if they manage to somehow save the money by cutting the pay of public sector workers, there's no guarantee this government will be able to put that money productively to use.
I know that some people are calling on some projects that are already in the pipeline, like moving the Powerhouse Museum and rebuilding the stadium. I know that your leader, Jodie McKay, has suggested that they should be re-looked at. Tell us about what your thinking is there.
Well, the Premier says this is all about choices, and she's right. It's about how you choose to deploy the money you've got. And frankly, the Powerhouse Museum so far, they've spent $38 million and haven't created a single job. You've really got to consider in the circumstances where the money can be best employed and to best effect. And we know that stimulating the economy by getting more money into the economy and moving around is a vital first port of call to economic recovery. And public sector wages is an important part, has an important part to play in it.
But does not the Treasurer have a good point there when he says, well, we've got all these construction jobs in the pipeline, and I guess that means that we will come out of this with new assets for the state? Is that something that you give credence to?
Look, there's certainly economic activity created and jobs from the projects while they're being constructed. Many of the projects, of course, will cost money once they're up and running. Yes, there'll be assets, but they'll continue to cost money to maintain and to keep working. But the point is that we do need to get the economy moving, and it needs a variety of forms of stimulus, including getting money into people's pockets and into shops and businesses all around the state, and cutting the pay of 400,000 of our fellow citizens, many of whom have put their own lives at risk during the pandemic to continue delivering the services we need, is simply an act of economic vandalism by the government. It's short-sighted. It will cost jobs. It won't create jobs.
OK, we know that the Treasurer is set to meet with Robert Borsak from the Shooters, Fishers and Farmers Party for some heavy lobbying. What about you? Will you be doing the same later on today?
We have been talking to our colleagues in the New South Wales Upper House well before this. The Treasurer, of course, has waited until after he made his announcement before he started doing house calls. The fact is, I think the government will face a very difficult time sustaining this in the Upper House. We're not taking anything for granted, though. We're continuing to talk with our colleagues, but we think the government has got a battle ahead of it.
All right. Thanks very much for your time this morning.
Thank you.
Adam Searle, who is the Shadow Industrial Relations Minister, and that pay freeze set to be argued in Parliament a little later on today.